Good evening and welcome to the 6th edition of Minority Caucus here on Joy News TV. My name is Peter Bamfo and I'm sitting in for your regular host, Obobia Dako Popo, who obviously is out of the jurisdiction on an equally important assignment. Now, this week we are continuing the discussion on the People's Manifesto of the National Democratic Congress, NDC. Now, it is instructive to note that since the launch of this game-changing superior manifesto of the NDC, we've had scores of commendation come in from different sectors of our economy. We've had interest groups, we have all kinds of groups who have actually come out to commend the NDC for that amazing job they did on their manifesto. Now, apart from that, we all have been living witnesses also of the many U-turns President Akufo-Addo and his government have had to do on the many policies contained in the NDC's manifesto since it was outdoored, and which, of course, they came out earlier on to publicly condemn. In Kumasi yesterday, the capital city of the Ashanti region, the NDC held what we will call the first in the series of town hall meetings to highlight and further break down the transformational policies and programs contained in the People's Manifesto in the Akan language. Now, this initiative will be replicated in other regions of the country, just so we would have the manifesto available to every Ghanaian as we embark on this rescue mission to ensure that we create jobs and prosperity for all of Ghana, and most importantly, to restore Ghana on the path of development and progress. Tonight on Minority Caucus, our focus will be on local government and decentralization, and in the studio, and of course we'll look at sports as well. And in the studio with me to do that discussion tonight will be the former Minister for Youth and Sports. He's also a Member of Parliament for the Ododo Diodio constituency. I would introduce him appropriately when we return. Do well to stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, you're welcome back. It's a Minority Caucus here on Joy News TV. Remember, the show is live every Wednesday, and we are going all the way through to December. And I've already indicated to you that today I'm sitting in for the most adorable Obobia Dako Opoko, who is out of the jurisdiction on a very important assignment. And so tonight I indicated to you we're discussing the NDC's People's Manifesto. And tonight we're looking at two critical areas: the sporting sector and, of course, local government and decentralization. We'll start with local government and decentralization, but before that, I would like to read a few of the major policies that have been captured under local government and decentralization. I'm sure that you have heard that the NDC has made a promise of paying assembly members, and I just want to read a few of the things captured under local government and decentralization, and then I'll bring in Neil Lante van der Poel, the Member of Parliament for Ododo Diodio, and then we can start the conversation. Now, it says, in order to strengthen our local government system, we will therefore implement the following: pay assembly members, that's A. B, upgrade Ho, Kaswa, Ashaiman, Techiman, Koforidua, Sunyani, Bolgatanga, Hohoi, and Wa municipal assemblies into metropolitan assemblies within the first year of coming into office. C, assess and upgrade selected district assemblies to municipal assemblies. Increase the district assemblies common fund from 5% to 7.5% of the total national revenue. And it goes on and on and on. But one of the things that actually caught my attention most is the promise to reassign and integrates the traditional local government functions such as sanitation, community development, back to the municipal district and metropolitan assemblies, and most importantly, the setting up of a municipal bond for purposes of rural development, amongst a host of others. Now, let me welcome Nielante van der Poy onto the show this evening. Good evening, Nina. How are you doing?
Good evening, Peter. I'm doing
How is Ododio?
It's good.
Really?
Very, very good.
I'm sure that I reckon that you have been busy since the manifesto was launched. You've been going around, trying to talk to people about it. You are one of the spokesperson on local government, the sectorial spokesperson. Let's start with local government and the NDC. It looks as if there's a lot of focus on local government each time the NDC is in power. For instance, when this government came, they decided to cap the amount of funds that go to these district assemblies, amongst a whole host of other things that have actually rendered these district assemblies ill-equipped. Let's discuss what promises have been contained in the NDC's manifesto going forward into this year's election. You've listed a number of things, paying assemblymen, which has generated a lot of controversy all over the place. Let's
thank you very much. And first, let me say good evening to our cherished viewers, and to say good evening to all the people who have created this platform for the NDC to be able to bring out its policies and its programs to the public. And let me thank you also for inviting me to this program, and to say we wish Obobia that wherever she is the best. And let me say a big thank you to my executive in the constituency, for allowing me to take a time off our activities today to be here, and to thank all the party supporters who last Sunday shocked the country with a massive, massive health walk. In fact, that health walk was organized by a branch, the Iraq branch, and
in Ododio.
It was something else. I've never seen it before. We've had big walks, but this one was just beyond. And it was just a branch that organized it. It was not actually even sanctioned by the constituency executive, because we thought that we needed to do the necessary things, and also because of the protocols and all those things. But they shocked all of us. And yesterday we continued with our inauguration of ward campaign teams and branch campaign teams. So yesterday was Kinka, and it was another thing. As when we finished, we had a wonderful K&K and Accra feast on the Sanitation Road. And it was great to see you all sitting down and eating together with the regional vice chairman, Vignon, and other executives of the party, and the people, ordinary people. We share meal together on the street. So I want to thank all the people of Ododio for their support so far. Now let me come to the question you asked. Let me say this. The NDC, from history, has given great importance to the role of local governance. Because we are a grassroots party, we have belief is that if you want to reach out to the people, then what you need to do is to be able to deepen local governance. During the time of Jerry John Rawlings under the revolution, one of the most prominent people who was chosen to be at the local government ministry, then secretary, for example, later on became the president of this country, John Ajay. That tells you how serious the NDC tradition takes local governance. Someone like Kwame Nkrumah is an internationally recognized local governance expert. We've had people who have passed because we give credence to local governance. No surprise, NDC instituted the district assembly concept. So as far back as in 1988, we started the idea of taking governance to the people, making people become part of the governance of this country, people taking decisions for themselves as to how the developmental agenda of their areas, their jurisdiction must go. So we wanted to deepen governance. And you see, when you do that, it also leads to transparency, because then everybody at the grassroots level gets to know what comes in and how it's being used for. Local governance has developed. Countries like Uganda, Kenya, and other countries came to Ghana to learn from us. So it is important that Ghana as a country should give so much importance to try and deepen the mechanisms that will make local governance thrive. But unfortunately, under this government, what have we seen? We've seen the reverse side, just as they've reversed almost every aspect of our development. The same way they've totally killed local governance.
What have they done to
this government has, I would say, not only mutilated the ministry, they've virtually cut the ministry into pieces. From the functions of local governance, local government ministry, for example, has been taken away, given to special initiatives. It's been given to water and sanitation. It's been given to, what do you call it, this other ministry, monitoring, evaluation, and then
Zongo ministry.
Yes, so all these. So it's made the work of local government as a ministry virtually that of just supervising MMDCs.
Well, how would you respond to the fact that indeed all of these is to improve or inject some level of efficiency into the management of our local government system, so that you will, I mean, that's the whole point in the decentralization.
No. You see, that's where Akufo-Addo made a mistake. He thinking that doing that will create efficiency is a mistake. Because at the end of it all, it's not the institution of local government that creates efficiency. It's the supervision and how you make sure that your people work and do what they are responsible for. So if you create that, what he has actually done is he has now centralized activities of local governance. Because things that are supposed to be done down there have now been taken over and being done at the center. So you have reversed the clock. And that is what you have not done right. So what we have tried to do is to let this manifesto focus on reintegrating local government as a very integral part of governance. Because to me, if you take the central government, the most important aspect of our governance system is local government. Because whatever decision you take at the top is supposed to be implemented down there. So when you involve the down in the decision making, it becomes easier for them to accept and own the policies and the programs. Even a white man, excuse my language, wasn't stupid enough when they decided to do what we call the indirect rule. So they related with the people through the chiefs. You understand? Because they know that the only way they can be able to send their message effectively to the people and let the people accept and transmit whatever they want to do is by going through certain authority. And that authority at that time found expedient in the chieftaincy institution and traditional authorities. That's why, even in the olden days, when a mission, for example, the Presbyterian Church, want to do something, what they actually do is pass it to the traditional authorities and also their catechists in the various local assemblies. So it's been part of our culture, our tradition. But for you to come now and decide to dismember the activities of local government and centralize everything is just out of the way. I'm not surprised, therefore, when the president sent a list of ministries that form his cabinet, as the constitution demands, local government ministry, for the first time in the history of Ghanaian politics, was missing.
It wasn't part.
It wasn't part. So as we see today, the list of ministries that form the president's cabinet, local government is a backbencher. A cabinet. And it's so sad.
Doesn't matter.
It matters. What it means is that issues about local government will not be given the prominence it deserves at cabinet level. So that if you want to push an agenda on local government, what we have to do is to lobby through another strong cabinet minister. How can it happen that you have somebody like Halima Mahama as a minister of local government? Then, how Akumsin is in cabinet, Halima is not in cabinet? Because you've taken the functions of local government and given it to special initiatives. So local government that is supposed to embark on boreholes to alleviate the water problems in our rural areas, they can't do it. And then they'll be there. DCEs will be there. Then special initiatives will give instructions to DCEs that will send somebody from Accra to come and do borehole in your community. It doesn't make sense. The country is overwhelmed with sanitation problems because at the district level, they don't actually know who is responsible for sanitation anymore. You understand? The local people at the assemblies who want to belong to Closak. You understand? But you are sending them out of Closak to another ministry. And they are not happy with that. They wouldn't want to leave the local government service. They want to be a local government service. But as soon as you put their functions under another ministry, what you actually do is you're transferring them to another union. So all these are problems that are engendering in the grounds at the local assembly level through the assembly. So it's made work, supervision, and control of staff, for example, at the various MMDCs extremely difficult.
You have been at the local government ministry before and operated there. One of the things that you have talked about in this year's manifesto is that you're going to pay assembly members. Quite apart from that, you have also stated in point P that you're going to improve and decentralize births and deaths registration at the local level by training and empowering assembly members to facilitate births and deaths registration. Is it a policy that you have actually thought through?
Yes, yes.
Is it implementable?
Very easy. First, let me take the issue of payment of assembly. I've been an assembly member before. The difference in this particular aspect, the fact that John Mama has been an assembly member before, Nana Akufo-Addo has never been an assembly member before, Baumia has never been an assembly member before, so they don't even know what assembly members mean. But we have, majority of us in government, we're part of the system. And so we know what assembly members do. In some of the communities, assembly members have become the various, let me say, local points of community mobilization, cohesion, development, and also agenda setting. And some of them are in very difficult situations. They are assembly members in very rural areas. Sometimes to commute between their electoral area and the district assembly sometimes is difficult. So you remember during the time of Professor Mills, we even went ahead and said that we're giving each assembly member a motorbike to facilitate their work so that they could move from the communities, the local communities, to sometimes somebody even becomes sick when there's no ambulance. It's assembly member's motorbike that transports the person to the nearest clinic. So to us, assembly members are very, very vital if you want to develop this country. So we thought about it. We said, look, this will eventually live on allowance. Under this system, some of the assemblies cannot even pay the basic sitting allowances. As I'm talking to you now, some assembly members at AMA, for example, have not even received the small token that is given to them as ex gratia when the assembly was last dissolved. So up to today, the assemblies have been dissolved over a year, but they have not received anything. Some of them even have outstanding sitting allowances at the assembly which have not been paid. I have reports of some assemblies who for 6 months now have not received anything as allowance because the revenue generation of the assemblies have been poor. The system is so bad, there's a crunch in the system, nothing is working, so the revenue outflows of the assemblies is totally minimal. It's not there. And so the assemblies are unable to even pay sitting allowances to assemblies, so the assemblies are not even sitting to be able to generate the development paradigms for their various assemblies, jurisdictions. So you go to assemblies, there is total despondency. So when you meet assembly members and they tell you that we need something to act as motivation or incentive to be able to give us that impetus to be able to do what we are supposed to do, it has to be considered, and that we considered. In total, in Ghana, we have close to 9,017 assembly members. That is when we combine elected and government appointees.
9,000?
9,017. If you are considering only elected members, it's about 6,700. Let's even take it for example that they are taking 1,000 cedis as a monthly allowance. That will going to give us about 108 million a year.
Do we have resources for that?
If we should decide to cut down the ministers and appointees of President Nana Akufo-Addo from 125 to 85, we'll make so much savings if you consider how much they receive a month. That could pay for half of assembly members. And then we come down to the elephant-sized presidential staffers at the office of the president. from almost about 770 something during John Mahama's time to 1,200 something in Nakufado's time. If we cut down almost about 400 people from there, we'll be able to have enough that could meet about 2/3 of the amount that we will need to pay assembly members, even if it is 1,000 cedis a month. So we started and done this analysis, and we think that it's so easy to be done. Not to talk about the sort of waste in the system that is occurring now under this government. It shouldn't be a problem for the government to decide, the John Mahama's government in 2021, to decide to generate enough money to pay assembly members, even if it's going to be 1,000 cedis a month. I think assembly members will be so happy that they will hear that they are going to take something like 1,000 cedis a month as allowance. And we are not even saying, in fact, in this particular instance, even this, there is this other issue that comes up. Assuming somebody like me, I'm an assembly member, am I going to receive the 1,000 cedis? Because I'm already taking a pay in my establishment, wherever I'm working, as a government staff, it will not be proper for you to take another pay. So possibly those people will take allowance. That will be a percentage as agreed by government and the assemblies of what the other members of the assembly who are not government workers will take. And this will help the assemblies now. The assembly members will work. Because by this, what they're also going to do is through this, they're going to be the agents of revenue mobilization in their assemblies.
In what way are they?
You mentioned the birth and death.
Right.
When I was Deputy Minister for Local Government, I happened to have sat in the meeting of ECOWAS Ministers of Local Governance. And we're looking at the issue of property addressing and also house numbering, as we started under our regime, which today people have messed it up. We did so much work on that. We got to what we call the UPN, generating the UPN for all properties. The UPN is the unique plot number, so that even if there's a Lotto kiosk in front of this Joy FM, that Lotto kiosk will have a number, a unique number. When you transfer that Lotto kiosk to any part of the country, that number will still work. So every parcel of land or every property on any part of the land in this country was going to have a unique number. So it will help the assemblies to be able to generate revenue, because then you will be able to pay your business operating licenses and all these other rates and fees that assemblies will impose. And then we move to the issue of registration of vital statistics, which has to do with getting people captured on the database of countries through the district assembly concept. So we developed a framework. It's been on the drawing board. It was very well handled by the former registrar of birth and death. I'm happy today. Yeah, Agbeko, John Agbeko. You know how he was thrown out. But I'm happy that the Reverend who has taken over has been very conscientious and followed the program that John Agbeko initiated.
I indicated that we're going to look at sports and local government as well as decentralization. You have touched a bit on the payment to be made to this assembly members. One of the things I read, which had to do with a housing revolving fund. What is that about?
It's very interesting. You know, under the last NDC government, when Julius Zebra was the minister, we launched this idea. Using local resources in the north, using local resources, having a sort of fund from the assembly, people creating the sort of funding that will be able to use to build small local houses, so that we will be able to solve the issue of shelter and accommodation and housing, which has become very difficult for central government to resolve. We have a feeling that through the local assembly, for example, I don't know what your assembly is.
Ablekuma Central.
Oh, I will want to use more rural assembly. Where do you come from?
Akachi South.
Akachi South. So let's start Akachi South. We could use local materials within Akachi South jurisdiction, with local artisans, with the support. Then we say that in Akachi South we have about 500 people who don't have housing, who have problem with housing. So through the local assembly, once we capture these people, the assembly will decide that for every year we are building 2-bedroom small units, 200 of them. So then they get into from that fund, revolving fund, and then they build those houses, then give them out to these people, and then the rent will be paid through the assembly, and that rent will be paid back into the revolving fund. So each assembly, so if somebody is, for example, posted, a doctor is posted, a teacher is posted to a rural area, that assembly itself has accommodation ready for those people. So the person will come there and say, I'm not going to work here because I don't have accommodation.
So this is actually different from what has been captured under pensions, where you say that having contributed for at least 10 to 15 years, you can use that fund to access mortgage.
Yeah, so
this is different.
Pension is different. This one is also using the local resources, be able through the district assemblies common fund, for example, to say that, look, the assemblies can say that, look, we are going to use part of our common fund to build housing units, rental household units to the people within our, so that slowly you will see that we will be easing the housing deficit within our, and this one is focused more on rural housing. This one is focused more on rural housing. But it will not take out of place, for example, urban assemblies. For example, the AMA, the KMA, the TMA, and the rest to also decide that this is what we want to do. So, for example, TMA, TEMA, and TDC can enter into a partnership. TMA could provide the sort of resources, TDC could provide expertise to embark upon this housing program for people who live within the jurisdiction. Affordable ones, very simple 2-bedroom houses. Because we captured this under the UN Habitat program, where UN Habitat builds smaller units for people. It becomes easier for them to afford and also be able to pay back. It's not any elaborate program. And when you're using local raw materials, it's also cheaper. So for example, we have a lot of clinker around the northern part of the country. It will be easier for them to use the clinker, easier for them to use, because when you go to rural areas, they don't go out to hire the services of architects, quantity surveyors, and the rest to build their houses, do they? No. Local carpenters, local masons come together and build those houses. And some of those houses have lived hundreds of years.
So it's going to actually be under the Ministry for Local Government,
yes.
Not sanitation,
no,
special development initiative and all of the Zongo Ministry and all. Now, before I move on to sports, were you actually disappointed when an initiative that was started under the former Chief of Staff, Julius Debra, the National Sanitation, were you disappointed that you left behind a project or a program of this nature and it wasn't continued to get the desired results that you wanted?
That was one of the, let me say, one of the most loudest programs we embarked upon. What even encouraged me was the role played by traditional authorities in that program. And also what made it so effective is the fact that it moved the Ministry of Local Government from Accra to the particular region, at least for a week. Interacting with
How
chiefs.
did that work out?
No, what we do is that when we move in, the whole secretariat of the ministry move into the region. You know, we have 2 deputies, so sometimes when we move in, the minister will be at the RCC level, and then we will move to the districts, meeting with chiefs, opinion leaders, communities, the clergy, the Islamic group, and all those things, market women, and then taking local government and interacting with them, finding out their perceptions about the assembly, how they think we can resolve the problems for the assembly. And then we now take opportunity to let them understand the need for us to have that communal spirit where we can all work together to tackle issues like sanitation, environmental degradation, and pollution. Because we had a feeling that some of the problems we are having with environmental degradation through Galamsey, for example, has to do with the traditional authorities. Because the people who do Galamsey get the land and the rest from traditional authorities. So how do we interface with traditional authorities to make sure that they let these people, when they are giving the lands out to these people, or when their families or their traditional landowners are giving the lands out to them for this activity, how do they inculcate into the program reclamation, issues about making sure that they do their work within an environment that will not pollute their water, that will not spoil the environment and all. So we try to interact with them. Then when we finish, then we and all these chiefs engage in the sanitation together. So when the people see their chiefs engaging in sanitation, then we also take the opportunity for the chiefs that day to tell their people that from today, I don't want to see anybody, for example, drinking water and then throwing the sachet into the gutter. We don't want to see people chewing sugarcane on the street and dropping the sugarcane on the. So then they take, for example, we went to Kumasi, one of the most successful programs. We did the work together with Otum for himself. We went through Kumasi, very successful program. Around Asafo, KJT, Edum, and the rest. We did a cleanup together. When we finished, for close to about a week, we got people to monitor. The streets of Kumasi were still clean because everybody became each other's keeper. I said, so only now two are there to Femeka catch your for. Because he himself announced that from today, anybody who drops anything on the street has committed an offense and will be sanctioned before the stool. So you see the impact that will make. We did the same in Tamale. We did the same thing in Goso, where the chief himself on the speaker announced that from today, he has totally banned the chewing of sugarcane and also throwing of orange peels on the street.
So going forward, what would be so unique about this National Sanitation Day if the NDC is elected into government?
You see, the whole idea is to inculcate into the general citizens of this country, because we think that some of the problems we are having with environmental sanitation is also issue of people's habits. So when you take advantage of the national sanitation and continually talk to people, interact with people, you in a way be indoctrinating them to understand that it is not right for you to do this. Because some of us have taken it for granted that we sit in a car and throw things away without anything. But when a politician like me goes to stand anywhere and talk about that, don't do this, don't do that. Sometimes some people who don't belong to my party, will even close their receivers before you even finish. But when they come into from our chiefs, our traditional authorities, our imams, our pastors, our people tend to accept it more readily than from politicians. So it's going to, we created a synergy with the traditional authorities and the churches and the missions and the Islamic society so that we could reach the people on how to change their habits and lifestyles as far as environmental sanitation is concerned. And this, up to today, Togo has been doing this close to over 20 years, and they are doing it. Certain countries like Malaysia and other places started it, and today, you cannot do some of these things. You cannot chew a gum, for example, and drop it on the street of Malaysia. And we think that habits are formed over years. The same way when we continue to hammer on it and let people go through a certain practice, we all become. Today, let me tell you, even though this government has not given the National Sanitation Day any prominence, any attention, they've virtually forgotten about it. It has become part and parcel of the lifestyle of certain communities that on every first Saturday of the month, they engage in it, whether the government is part of it or not, whether the assembly is part of it, they do it anyway. So it tells me that if we had continued, sustained this program, we would have been successful. I wasn't surprised because, look, when we were doing this, when we started, we interacted with Parliament. We interacted with all the members of Parliament. I can say on record that when we did, the whole year we did this program, only 2 MPP members of Parliament participated. Even though we get them involved in the discussion, when we are going to move into any region, we meet the regional caucus, interact with them and all this. Only 2 of them actually got involved in this activity. One of them is passed. That's the late Peter Wiafe of Abetifi. And then the MP of Impriso. I forgot his name.
Oh, it's Pepra.
No, Pepra is Abetifi.
Okay.
Impriso. Achampong.
Okay.
Achampong. No, but the rest, nobody.
Achampong.
Yes, nobody. They will not get involved. They don't even want to get involved. And it's sad because what we're doing at that time, I've always told people that there's no way you take this thing for granted, because sanitation has nothing to do with party politics. Because if there's a cholera outbreak, if there's incidence of malaria, the mosquito...
So what is this legislation bit that you intend to introduce to this program?
We thought that to make it more effective, there's a need to legislate the day, so that compulsorily every Ghanaian would take part of it, as is done in other countries. Because this one was voluntarily, people think that there's no compulsion. There's nothing that it's not mandatory. I can do it or I wouldn't do it. Because we went to Kumasi, for example, we were cleaning the gutter. We got to a place. There were these boys who were sitting down playing draft. And then, do you know, when we asked them to just get up, we said, oh, yeah, Jumabia. Then do you know what they did? They lifted their legs so that we could clean the drain under them. And when we have cleaned, then they sat down to continue with their draft. If there were to be a legislation, immediately those people could be arrested and put before the local court. You know, because traditionally, we have what we call Manjuma. And it is incumbent on every citizen within that locality, that jurisdiction, to actively participate. In fact, in some jurisdictions, if you are from that community and you are even living somewhere else, and they are doing your Manjuma in your country, it used to happen every month, and you don't come to participate. If you have funeral or anything, they calculate all those days that you don't come home to participate in activity. If you are aspiring for any position in the town, they take all those things into consideration. That's how serious communities take this on Manjuma. So when you go to places like the central region, it's very serious. In the Gomoa areas or Agona areas, Manjuma is very serious. It's something they don't joke with. It's also part and parcel of their traditional activities. For example, when they are doing Akwambo, it's part of the program. And I think the National Sanitation Day is unfortunate, has been mutilated and killed by Nana Akufo-Addo's government. It's all part of the fact that they don't respect the local governance. They don't have any the local governance is not a priority. But NDC is coming to deepen local governance. For example, you've seen that we've decided that we're going to have very strong traditional authority where they almost become like the third chamber, where they will meet and give decisions and all those things to help government. So I think that is a very, very important, and that will help our traditional authorities.
We'll come back and then do a lot more in-depth analysis on the various components of under the local government and decentralization. But we'll move on to sports now and look at those.
I know you like sports.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, you were at local government. You were
local government
as well.
Local government is my first baby.
I couldn't have.
Local government is my first baby. I'm the ranking member for local government, so I love local government.
Absolutely. Let's look.
I like it more than sports, though.
Really?
Really, yeah.
I'm sure I will be able to tell by your responses. So let's look at sports. Before, you headed a ministry that had youth combined with sports. In the current NDC manifesto, you don't have youth attached to sports anymore. Quite apart from that, you are promising centers of excellence, you are promising district stadia and all of that. What exactly should somebody who is a sports enthusiast expect from the NDC going into 2021 and beyond?
You see, the NDC manifesto, if you look at the theme, is of jobs, prosperity in an inclusive environment. What we are looking at is to be able to give the youth, the development, the future of the youth of this country, especially attention. Over the period, the youth development has become so salient at sports, at the Ministry of Youth and Sports. So it's always been like sports takes the attention of the ministry so much that issues about the youth, the development of youth, the orientation of the youth, the future of the youth is virtually becoming relegated to the backbench. And that to us as a party, to the NDC as a social democratic institution, it's not, because we believe that the future of this country will depend on the sort of youth you produce. So that if you produce a kind of youth who understand the vision and the objective of the country, understand what this country is aiming at, what this country want to achieve for the people of this country in the next 10 years, 20 years, it will help them have that sort of consciousness, wherever position they find themselves in affairs of this state, to be dedicated towards the development and the vision of the country. All these countries that have developed, the Koreas, even the US, if you give it to the US, the psyche of every US citizen is built on the foundation of what that child or that US person is taught at the youth level, that America is the greatest state in the world. America is a state of freedom, of liberty. You understand? So growing up, the person grows up with that. So we think that it's time that we take the issue of youth affairs, the development of youth, give it the special attention, create a whole ministry for them, and so that they can have that time, that resources, and that sort of orientation to develop the future of this country through the youth development. And then sports. So we can also have full attention for sports. The Africa, most countries have changed from youth and sports to sports and recreation. Some countries have sports, tourism, and recreation. Some countries have youth and culture, and then sports and recreation. South Africa, for example. And the last African ministers of sports that I attended in Senegal, that was the orientation that we're going to, so that for us to be able to have time, energy, resources for the development of our youth, let's try and separate issues about the youth from sports. It is true that the youth are the ones who engage in sports. But the same youth, when you develop him very well, mentally, when that youth is doing sports, he will not be too happy about money. He will be very conscious about the fact that he is contributing to the development of this country. So that orientation, a well-developed youth, his orientation for participating in every sporting activity for the development and the image of the country will be different from a youth that is not well developed mentally. You understand? So the orientation that is given to the youth will be dependent on the vision and the programs that the country set for itself. I believe seriously that if we can orient our youth very well, we reduce issues about corruption, low productivity, all these things will come down. Because people then go in there knowing that you ask for what you can do for your country and not for what your country can do for you. That should be the focus. Now let me come to sports. This government has virtually done what we call cosmetic sports.
What do you mean?
What I mean is that they think that just going around the country and dotting recreational grounds around is what we call development of sports. No. Sports, the world over, is put on 3 pillars: development, promotion, and management. Every sporting activity. So if you get up and all that you want to talk about development of sports, and then develop sports, you go and build recreational grounds instead of building sports facilities, you are not developing sports. For example, let me give just one example. When I got into the Ministry of Youth and Sports, we were going to build a football park at New Edibiase to serve the interests of the people, the chiefs and people of New Edibiase, because the chiefs and people of New Edibiase have contributed tremendously in building a football club from the scratch that has become the most powerful club in the country. Look at New Edibiase.
Yeah.
But then they had qualified for Africa, and during the time of Professor Mills, they could not play the Africa Cup matches in Edibiase because their park could not pass the standard. So they virtually have to go and play in Obuasi. What that decision meant was that all these other, byproducts of the club, you understand, the backward integrated services that the club will provide, like small economic activity by the person who sells ice water, the hotels and the guest houses in Odubiasi and the rest, will all suffer. Some of them have gone for a loan to build a guest house because he knows that anytime Odubiasi plays football, Some people will come and sleep in the guest house, and then he will generate some income. Now they are going to play in Obuasi. So it means that that guest house will be totally not have any. So Professor Mills thought it was right. So he set out. So President Mama came and continued with the vision of Professor Mills. When I got in with President Mama, we went to near the BSA and we met the Queen Mother then. And then she talked about the park. We said, okay, we want to do the park for you. But when I went there, I saw that the land that had been acquired was only for a park. So I said, no, Mr. President, I beg you, this cannot pass for a sports facility. If we really want to develop sports in the new BSA area, just as you were thinking about football, think about athletics, think about volleyball, hockey, basketball, and other sporting disciplines within this area. For example, if the schools in this area want to do schools and colleges, which athletic track would they use? Which volleyball court would they use? So when I look at all this, I say, okay, Nana, if you can give us more land, instead of a park, we shall build a sports stadium. So we move from New Edibiase Park to New Edibiase Stadium. We're adding volleyball court, basketball court, athletics oval, hockey pitch, all to the dressing rooms and also stands to it. That's what I'm talking about. So this particular government has totally lost it. If you use money and go and do what we have in a place like Medina or Wale Wale, because you want to certify the vice president at the detriment of RTU and other teams in Tamale, you want to certify the Zongo minister at the detriment of Accra, Suffolk, Great Olympics and the teams.
I'm sure that tomorrow you would have to come on my show and then we can continue this conversation.
I'm always available.
Because just when the show is getting interesting, all too soon time.
I didn't know it's already 1 hour.
I mean, that's how time flies. So tomorrow, our viewers will be assured that you would come and continue this conversation on Asempa 94.7 FM. For those of our Chi-speaking folks, because I mean, yesterday that's what you did in Kumasi, and so they would want to have a feel of that. Let me say a very big thank you to you, Honorable D. Lante van der Poel. It's been an awesome time with you, our viewers back at home, and this is where we have to draw the curtains on tonight's edition of Minority Caucus. And thank you to Obobia Dako Opoko for making me do the setting in, and of course to your production team, Abna Bagbo and Yayira Koku. Thank you all very much for the wonderful time, and of course my wonderful outfit, Philip Senyo Chagli. Thank you very much. God willing, tomorrow Nilante will be on my show, and that we can continue the conversation. That's an hour and a half, so we can have some more time to talk. My name once again is Peter Bamfo. I'm out of here.